Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's session today. My name is Rebecca Chappell and I'm a junior consultant at Tanner & Townsend. And we're joined today by Laura, Nene from the Disclosure Bearing Service, as well as Suzanne from the Social Care Institute for Excellence. So this is a Retrofit Information Support and Expertise event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero and delivered by Tanner & Townsend.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've had a great morning so far, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the Disclosure and Borrowing Service. My name is Nena Foster, and I'm the Commercial Development Manager within the Commercial Development team here at DBS. Within our team, there are two strands: commercial marketing, who are responsible for sector prioritization, market research, and campaigns. Then we have the product and services team, which I'm on, that take sectors which have been identified and reach out to those leaders and associations within those sectors to highlight where DBS basic checks could be used within their recruitment process. Our overall aim is to make sure that DBS is visible, trusted, and influential. And in this presentation, we will be speaking to you about basic DBS checks. Now I'll pass you on to Laura, who will introduce herself.
Thanks, Nene. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, just. My name is Laura Gaskell. I'm the National Outreach Advisor at DBS. So I work with organisations that work nationally across England and Wales, and largely a part of my role is to support organisations understanding eligibility around standard and enhanced with barred list checks, but more importantly, understanding their legal duty to make referrals to the Disclosure and Borrowing Service. Today, Nene is going to take the lead on this presentation. I'll hop in at the end and just give you a bit of an overview of some of the further services that we can help and support with. And of course, I'll be on hand to answer any questions that might fall into my remit. But thanks for having me along today.
Right, thanks, Laura. So before I jump into the slide deck that you were obviously very excited for, I just wanted to do a little quick question. Now, feel free to pop your answers into the chat. How long do you think a basic DBS check will take to come through? I'm going to give you three options. So we've got under 48 hours, 3 days, or over a week. So I'll give you about like 30 seconds to pop that in the chat. If you want to, there's no pressure. And then once we've got that, then I will move on to the next slide, please. Brilliant. So what did you get? I'm not going to lie, I can't really see exactly all the comments, but I saw a few that came through which said over 3 days, for example. So I know some of you must be thinking, oh, basic checks, they must take forever to come through. Well, actually, 88% of basic checks are completed within the first 48 hours. In fact, the fastest basic check done by DBS was in 23 minutes. So that's just a little bit of myth busting there for you. And I also just wanted to give you some more stats around basic checks. So each year, 2.6 million basic checks are completed, which is about the population of Manchester or just over the population of Birmingham. Over the course of this presentation, we will discuss what appears on a basic check as well, but were you aware that over 40,000 basic checks every year reveal a conviction? So all about a basic check. A basic check is a check of any conditional cautions and unspent convictions under the terms of the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, ROA, 1974. When an individual is convicted of a crime, that crime is considered to be irrelevant or spent as the legislation describes it after a set amount of time, the rehabilitation period, except in very limited circumstances. Simple cautions become spent immediately when there are issues, while conditional cautions become spent after 3 months. As the basic DBS check is the lowest form of criminal record check, it does not reveal spent convictions or warnings and reprimands. Anyone can apply for a basic check directly through us on our online application route, or an employer can apply for a basic check on an individual's behalf through a responsible organization, or RO for short, if they have consent. There's no legislative or eligibility requirements to have a basic check, so anyone aged over 16 can apply at any time, and you can request for this to be part of your recruitment process. So now you're probably asking, like, why are basic DBS checks important? So they're important because they provide relevant information about an individual's criminal history. This information can serve as a useful tool in supporting informed recruitment decisions. Anyone applying to Anyone can apply or be requested to apply for a basic check, and conducting a basic check on an individual before hiring them can help inform job suitability, strengthen recruitment decisions, and protect an organization's reputation. Employers can use this information to assess an individual's suitability for the role that they're applying for, reduce the risk of hiring someone who has a history of criminal behavior that may pose a risk to their organization. Next slide, please. So now we're just going to go through some of the key benefits of basic DBS checks. Firstly, it's a very quick turnaround, and we've just said 88% of cases the basic check is completed in 48 hours. So this makes it a great option for those who need a check. It helps protect vulnerable groups. For roles with access to vulnerable groups but fall out of standard and enhanced check eligibility, a basic check can provide additional reassurance that the individual has no relevant unspent criminal convictions. This will empower you to make appropriate recruitment decisions while supporting the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. It provides peace of mind. While employees obtaining a basic check, you can demonstrate that you have taken steps to ensure that any criminal unspent convictions of your workforce are disclosed. This can provide, again, peace of mind for you and your customers. It's a simple application process. Applying for a basic DBS check is simple and can be done online. All you need is your personal details and a valid form of identification, making it an easy part of the recruitment process for applicants. Widely accepted. The basic DBS check is respected by a wide range of employers and organizations and gives your customers confidence that you have checked the criminal record status of employees. No ties to legislation or role eligibility. The basic checks are for everyone. There's no legislative or role-based eligibility criteria that must be met, making it a simple addition to any recruitment process. It's value for money. The basic DBS check is the most affordable type of criminal record check offered by the DBS, making it accessible option for employers on a budget who only require a basic check. And finally, it improves staff retention. Staff feel invested in, valued, that they know that their employers are taking careful decisions about who should join the existing team. Next slide, please. So this is going to be, I'm going to be talking here about the rehabilitation of offenders. So in regards to ROA, are you a company that takes a zero tolerance to employing people with a criminal offense? Have you ever asked yourself why? Maybe instead of having like a zero confidence, maybe take it as a case-by-case approach. So if you get back a basic check with information on it, you need to consider to do a risk assessment on how a specific criminal offense affects a person doing the job. For example, if there is a fraud or finance offense and they're on a construction job, for example, as a bricklayer, they won't have access to your computer, for example. And if they're in the office, then a risk assessment would be different. If you do want to seek further information on when a conviction is revealed and you want to know more about how that could affect your decision to employ an individual, you can reach out to organizations such as NACRO and Unlock for advice. And as an employer, you can also reach out to Citizen Advice. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, most cautions and convictions are regarded as spent after a specific period has passed. This is set out within the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act 1974. In 2023, changes were made to the rehabilitation period for crimes relating to Schedule 18, which came into action. This resulted in any crimes that fall within Schedule 18 and for which a custodial sentence of over 4 years was given will never be spent and will always show on a basic check. These crimes are one where a serious violent, sexual, or terrorism offence was involved and is listed on Schedule 18 of the Sentencing Act 2020. In addition to the above Schedule 18 offences, any offence that is a life sentence or a sentence for the protection of the public will never be spent and will always show on a basic check. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it shows all of the checks that we do, but we are focusing on basic checks, which are the ones in the first column. As you can see, it shows what information will be shown, how one can apply, the age over 16, and the cost, $21.50. So that's just like an overview of all of our checks. Next slide, please. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about DBS and retrofit. Next slide, please. So here we've highlighted some of the industries who use basic checks, including construction and hospitality. You may also be aware that logistics and transport actually involves companies such as Amazon, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and Just Eat drivers. These are one of our largest users of basic checks. So incorporating basic checks into the hiring process for retrofit projects, not only supports safer recruitment, but also enhances safety, trust, and peace of mind. Next slide, please. And then next, oh, sorry, yes. And so now I'm going to hand over to Laura, who will talk through further resources.
Yeah, thank you. So can we just have, yeah, there we go. So as I said earlier, I'm the National Outreach Advisor, so obviously work with organisations based with multiple offices or workplaces across the England, I would say UK, England and Wales. We do have regional advisors. Don't stress if your regional advisor doesn't have a name and it goes to regional outreach. That's absolutely fine. We have somebody there that will pick that up and they will action your email. But our regional advisors essentially are there to help you with anything DBS related. So if you have a query around a level of check, you're unsure, you feel that in your line of work, you know you're going to be working with maybe children, so anybody that's not yet reached the age of 18. Or it could be that you are uncertain whether you fall into the category of working with a vulnerable adult. And we're talking here about what we'd call the adult workforce guide. So we have two workforces, the children's and the adult. And you were maybe thinking, I think this check might fall into a vulnerable role, so I might need a higher level of check. And you're unsure how to interpret that legislation. Please do reach to the advisors because they are more than happy to support you in applying and understanding that legislation. We completely appreciate how unbelievably tricky it is, and how it can be quite a grey area sometimes, and it can be very misconstrued. So if you are confused or you feel you need that support, please do reach out. And secondly, of course, we're not just about disclosure, we are barring as well, and that is just as important. So if you are having any concerns and you feel that you want to make a referral, whether you feel you have the legal duty or you want to do it through the power of referral, then please reach to those within your region again, because they would be more than happy to support you about the process, about how barring referrals are received, what we look for in barring referrals. I think probably certainly in my role, it's quite surprising how many people are uneducated around the barring side and how important the barring side is in preventing those who are seeking work to continue with any harmful behaviour and transferring that harm elsewhere. So please do, if you feel that you fall into either of those two, or you just want to get to know a little bit more, please do reach to your advisor, or if it would fall to myself as national, please reach out to myself as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Just next slide, please. Thank you, Laura.
No worries.
So here we have just like some useful links. I'm not sure if you guys will get access to the presentation, but at the end of this, you'll have Laura's email, you'll have my email. So if there's anything on this useful linksy page that you would like, we can happily forward that on. So this just talks about basic checks, transgender applications, rehabilitation period. So all links to pages of support, but as DBS, we are always here, as Laura has really highlighted, like we are happy to have those questions like ping to us. It is not a problem. So I just wanted to say, like, I hope you found this part of this session useful, and you might want to include basic checks and other DBS checks if you're eligible into your recruitment process. But thank you so much for taking time to listen to us today.
Great, thanks both. The next section is with Suzanne. So
good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me along. I'm just looking at the screen and I feel that Nina and I got the memo because I feel we're in matching jumpers, aren't we, today? Thank you very much for inviting us along. Next slide, please. So as you can see there, I'm the Safeguarding Audits Manager within Sky, and I manage Sky's offer for safeguarding audits right the way across a wide variety of sectors. Quite often those sectors will have either a regional, national or multinational footprint, and in all cases they will work with individuals who could be classified as having vulnerabilities, be that either through their age or their personal attributes. Social Care Institute of Excellence is a charity itself, and we work with a number of governmental bodies in influencing and bringing about change across the social care sector and supporting those who deliver within that sector. Next slide, please. Great. I want to start off with a trigger warning, and just to advise you that safeguarding can be a difficult topic to discuss. If we recognise that approximately 1 in 4 people have been subject to some form of abuse or neglect, if you are being affected by any part of this session, please link in with somebody within your organisation to talk things through with. Next slide, please. Okay, so the aim of today's session is to help you understand the different types of harm and abuse that children, young people and adults may experience. And the one thing that I want you to take away from today's session from my part is, if you remember nothing else, is the 4 R's of safeguarding. And hopefully this session will enable you to recognise, respond, report and record safeguarding if you also come across it within your role. We're also going to touch upon safer working practices as to how to keep yourself safe too. One thing that I'd like to say at this stage is the key factor for yourselves with regard to safeguarding is having that personal curiosity and a belief that safeguarding could happen in any situation. If we look at some of the major cases, and I'm going to go way back now to almost the millennium, when we look at a case with regard to Victoria Climbié and a case of a taxi driver, he was the only person who actually afforded Victoria any sort of protection, and that was a person who didn't necessarily have any safeguarding professional responsibility in their role, but they were concerned about something that they saw and raised it, and that was the trigger that finally enabled some help, unfortunately too late, to be brought forward for Victoria. So just remember that you don't necessarily have to be a doctor or a social worker or a police officer to have safeguarding responsibilities. Everybody has them. Next slide, please. Okay, so to touch on what we said there, we're going to start off by thinking about safeguarding in terms of a big S and a small s. So safeguarding with a big S is the statutory responsibility, and what that means is that's safeguarding that meets the requirements to trigger a formal investigation by a statutory body who has a duty and a responsibility to undertake an investigation. So, for example, if the police attend and a property where there is a concern that somebody may be being harmed or neglected, they have a statutory requirement to look into that. Likewise, if there's a referral through to either children's or adult services, as a result of that, they will need to undertake inquiries under either Section 47 of the Children Act or Section 42 of the Care Act in relation to making sure that people are safe. But in reality, the far more likely type of safeguarding that you will come across is safeguarding with a small s. And what that means is the safeguarding that we come across that mightn't trigger an official investigation, such as by children's services, adult services or the police, but ones where things are not as good as they should be, so there needs some sort of intervention to prevent things from escalating. And these are the things that you're more likely to see, and your intervention and your sharing of information can support things going forward to make sure that the situations don't escalate any further. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at the 4 R's of safeguarding in a little bit more detail. So In terms of stage 1, recognise is the first step. So what do we mean by that? It's the main takeaway, and we all have a responsibility in relation to supporting children, young people and adults, and making sure that they remain safe. Respond is the next phase, and that's about making sure that you do what you're meant to do in terms of taking that forward and sharing that information. Record is how you record that information within your own organisation, and refer is how you share that with people within your organisation and they share it externally with statutory agencies if so required. Next slide, please. Okay, so what do we mean by recognise? So if we're working in an environment and we see something that just doesn't sit right with us, you don't have to be 100% certain. And the sort of questions that you might ask yourself is, would you accept the type of behaviour that you're seeing if it was in relation to a friend or a relative? Is what you're seeing appropriate in terms of the age and development for that person? So, for example, if you're seeing something where you see somebody that has a significant amount of bruises, is that something that concerns you? It might be something a lot more subtle than that. Somebody who seems hesitant, or an environment that you think is not appropriate for the age of people that live there. For example, if you went in there and there was it was very neglected, or there was a hoarding case where there was piles of property that were stacked up within a home environment that could suggest that could present a risk. Is that sort of something that just doesn't sit right with you? The main overarching thing for you to think about is what you're seeing now unusual or explained in the context of the situation and environment that you're in? So if something's not sitting right with you, the next stage to take you forward is respond. So is what you're seeing or what you're being told, make sure that you're going to share that with your safeguarding lead within your organisation. And if you don't know who that is, I would recommend that you go away from this session and have a speak to people. Your HR department or your line manager should be able to advise you who your designated safeguarding lead is. In all cases where there's a safeguarding concern, you're under duty to tell that safeguarding lead without delay. And if a person discloses to you, it's whilst it being unlikely, but if they disclose a concern or of abuse or neglect with you, you must make sure that you share that information with that person's own words, that you don't put it into your own words. Next slide, please. Record. So that's the third of the 4 R's. Any concerns that you have and any subsequent action taken, you need to make sure that you're recording that and any documentation that you have for safeguarding concerns within your own work area and setting. If you're actually out and about, it's always a good idea in the first instance to just, if you don't have that form to hand, just to write down in your own notebook or on a piece of paper that you can keep safely and securely as to what it is that you've heard or seen that concerns you, just so you've got that record. The last R is make sure that you refer. So make sure that you refer to your safeguarding lead, but also your safeguarding lead is responsible for making sure that they share any concerns with a statutory agency to see if the threshold for their intervention is met. They will also help you consider how to share concerns with a parent or carer if appropriate. Top tip here is don't delay in passing on information and concerns. Timescales are there for matters to be resolved in a timely way, but these are the maximum time allowed. And what we mean by that is normally in most cases, most safeguarding procedures will require you to refer concerns within 24 hours. What I would say with regard to that is the absolute maximum, and nothing should prevent you referring that as soon as physically possible. So in relation to the 4 R's, I just want to give you an example of one concern that came through to me when I was frontline practice, and it was probably one of the best concerns that I had, and it was somebody who was working in a flat next to a nursery setting, and what they saw was some quite concerning behaviour. They were working in the flat above and next door when they observed behaviours with regard to somebody in a nursery which were really, really concerning, and they referred that through to us, and we were able to access CCTV with the help of the police and undertake an investigation that ended up in a person who was employed to protect and look after children and young people. They were resulted in a considerable prison sentence because of their behaviours, and that had been somebody who was actually going around to do a gas certificate for a flat next door to the nursery setting. So don't ever think that, you know, it's not your role or nobody would listen to you, because anything that you say that's a concern, it's really important to share that information. Next slide, please. What I do want to touch on today is a little bit about abuse. Now, this is going to be a real brief whistle-stop tour, and there's a lot of information out there, and the Sky website gives you information as well that will give you some more details with regard to this. Next slide, please. What makes something abuse? So is abuse and neglect always intentional? Absolutely not. Sometimes abuse and neglect can be because of ignorance or people acting in a way that due to speed or rush. It's not always people who actively go about their day seeking about looking to abuse others. Sometimes it can be a result of a well-intentioned action, but remember that in terms of abuse, it's about the impact of that act on the individual, not the intent. So if, for example, you see somebody grabbing and dragging an elderly person, and they say, you know, well, she always does that, I just have to pull her away, that would nevertheless raise an alarm bell and a concern, and that information should be shared. Next slide, please. So where does abuse take place? And in the first instance, what we tend to think about is that abuse always happens by others and in terms of strangers. And that is very rare. Abuse 9 times out of 10 will happen in relation to somebody that's known to the victim of the abuse. So you will find that abuse is far more likely to happen within somebody's neighbourhood, whilst within their school, within their peer group, within their family at home. And as you can see there, the closer we get to the child and young person, the more likely that abuse is to take place. Then, of course, we also have the added complexities of abuse taking place online in terms of scams or bullying or radicalisation and financial abuse. Next slide, please. As we can see, there's a number of types of abuse that we see here, and we don't actually have time to go through them all today. You'll probably recognise in terms of the physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse and neglect. They're the 4 signs of abuse that people tend to recognise. But be aware that bullying, harassment, financial abuse, organisational abuse, exploitation, in terms of radicalisation and honour-based abuse are also key types of abuse. Also concerns with regard to modern slavery as well. Next slide, please. Signs and responses. In terms of abuse that's related to children and young people and abuse that's related to adults, there are different signs and they also require different techniques. And the reason being is because any abuse that impacts upon a person who's under the age of 18, there is a requirement for you to refer that through. In relation to persons over 18, they have the requirement to be able to consent as to whether that information is shared. I'm not going to go into that in a great deal of detail today because it's something that you don't really need to worry about. It's more for your safeguarding lead. But what I would say is, in all cases, discuss it with your safeguarding lead and they will be aware around the areas of consent in relation to abuse and neglect with regard to adults. Next slide, please. Okay, just to finish off, I'm going to wrap us up on some safer working practices. So we've talked about how to make sure that if you have any concerns about other people being safe, You identify that and you refer that through to your safeguarding lead within 24 hours. You're making sure that you're recognising it, that you're reporting it, that you're recording it, and it's being referred on. What I'd like you to think about now is how can you work safely in a way that no concerns are raised with regard to your own work practice. Next slide, please. So in relevance to retrofit projects, as the home improvements take place, as it says, in the home, you will have quite a unique position where you enter people's homes, so you have that insight into their home life. And as it says there, how you respond could make a significant difference in terms of making sure that people remain safe. You could be the first person in that someone's home and seeing their situation for a long time, and you have that responsibility to act. But alongside that, there are also risks in relation to the fact that you need to make sure that you protect yourselves. So next slide, please. In terms of safer working practice tips, what we want you to do is to make sure that you always work within your remit, and sometimes that can be difficult, and quite often what we find is something which we call role drift. So people are employed to do one particular thing, but with the best intentions they do other things to help. So if you were to go into the home of an elderly person who was vulnerable and said, oh, while you're just here, could you just have a look at this for me? And you think, oh, that's easy for me to do, I can do that. Be careful of doing things which are outside of your job and outside of your remit, because that can call into question the transparency of your working, and also it can put you at risk if anything goes wrong with that piece of work that you do, or in terms of any insurance, or if people were to question why you're doing that additional work. The other thing to think about is to consider how others may view your behaviour or what you're saying, and are you acting in a transparent way and in a transparent manner. Next slide, please. So some of the ways that you can do that is, when you're in a property, you should always make sure that you're not in a room on your own with a person under the age of 18. Don't give out your contact details, your personal contact details, including your name, your contact details, your email or social media account details. I know from my own experience, when I have people who are in my property, I'll chat away to them and I'll make coppers with them, and quite often we'll end up finding some common ground, whether it's about our love for pets or animals or things like that. Be careful not to be drawn in to saying, oh, well, why don't you join this group that I've got, or oh, let me give you this number, I can help with regard to that. Try and avoid being in a room on your own with a member of the public, and we recognise that that's not always avoidable. So where it is unavoidable, ensure that doors remain open and you are positioned nearest to the exit, and that's just to make sure that you're safe. And wherever possible, we know that that isn't always 100% going to be the case, but where possible, that's a really useful tip. Next slide, please. Okay, and that's me. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone.